Alright, what's up guys, Single Player Nacho here. With the amount of enemies found in Resident Evil 4, can you actually believe that there were even more in the works that never saw the light of day? There's even more Morir es Vivir? Absolutely. A game as vast and action-packed as RE4, why wouldn't the imagination go as far as a mage with spells, or a bear pig man dude? Let's take a look at all of these awesome unused monsters, and we'll try to put them where they best fit in the game. First up, we're starting off with an absolutely horrifying design. The Parasite Woman. Look at this monstrosity. Out of all the concept art, this has to be the most intriguing. And I think the artist would agree given that there's 4 separate drawings of the Parasite Woman. The straitjacket variant is the most nightmare-inducing. And I have no doubts that we would have found this enemy in the laboratory section of the game, right next to the beloved Regenerators. What an amazing couple. What I see with the Parasite Woman is a more human version of a Regenerator, and she's just filled with mystery. Why is there even a mental institution within a cult like Los Illuminados? How'd she even end up here? I'd love to see this thing in action. Here we have easily one of the coolest unused Ganado designs, the Harlequin. What a blessing it would have been to see this royal servant in the game. She wields a giant sword, and I'm assuming her mechanics would have worked similarly to the Armadura, a bit faster but not as strong as those twerps. The Harlequin would undoubtedly stand out on the battlefield and would have been a semi-boss of sorts. A spot filled by the goat head cultists with red or purple robes. My biggest issue, which makes no sense, is that there's too much fantasy in her design. Sure, the entire game is filled with fantasy-like monsters, but as a sub-boss that roams around with Los Illuminados, it would make this insane, brutal cult look more like a nightmare parade gone wrong. I'm thinking that the Harlequin's best spot for an introduction is during the lava castle sequence, which already had a bunch of crazy shit happening. Fire-breathing dragon statues, a violent baldy carousel. A clown-like enemy would fit here perfectly. This is Super Dynamite Man. At least that's what the Resident Evil wiki calls him. Outside of his hilarious explosive beanie, look at that horrendous face. Now that's a creepy Ganado. The thing is, this is no Ganado at all. As the concept art suggests, we'd meet Super Dynamite Man in the castle section, so he may have been a concept long before Los Illuminados were truly fleshed out. This does not look like a cultist design at all. We may be looking at one of the very first enemies ever created for Resident Evil 4, Super Dynamite Man. I'm gonna have to give this guy a nickname. Hipster Bomb, Zomsplosion, TNT Virus. We'll stick with Dynamite. Thankfully, we don't have to guess where Dynamite would be placed. The concept art adds his inclusion within the action-packed mine section of the game. Maybe Dynamite was replaced by the actual Dynamite, and a huge boulder. Dynamite's exclusion from the game sucks because of how fun it is to make Ganados explode in the game. It's one of the funniest and satisfying mechanics in the game. Say hello to the Arcanist, the magical cultist with not 2, but 3 heads. Disgusting. And yet, the most Resident Evil monster that went unused. Sure, the idea behind a magician-type enemy doesn't fit in a series that deals with biological warfare, but here's the thing, its concept depends on its tremendous biology. The Arcanist has a freaking tentacle arm, and in another piece of concept art, it expels an unknown chemical that probably would have stunned the player. So it's not really much of an Arcanist, more of a mystery box of a Resident Evil monster that fits in perfectly. Why was it canned? Perhaps because of the ambition behind it. We gotta remember, this was when RE4 was still being developed for not 1 but 2 discs for the GameCube. I could definitely see why a 3-headed monster with different facial expressions wouldn't make the final product. Maybe it needed 3 discs, 1 for each of its faces. We'll never know. I would have loved to see the Arcanist in the final showdown in the castle, particularly during the lift sequence. And this is the very first prototype of El Ganador, affectionately known as Bear Claw Man. Now obviously, I can't really say Bear Claw Man was ultimately cut, pun intended, as the Ganador influence is heavy in this one, so what are the differences? We're looking at a more, how can I say this without you guys knowing I failed history? A more regal, royal Ganador, an upper-class aristocrat assassin with a gorgeous black mask along with crown-like jewelry embedded, miles away from what we actually got in the game. El Garador is best described as a prisoner with little to no intelligence, sealed-off eyes, and absolutely no care about his well-being. The Garador hardly even talks or says any actual words. I think this guy would have had some horrible things to say about Leon's hair with a snobby European accent. I'm kidding. Bear Claw Man's overall concept is pretty much in the final game. This is mostly a case of changing his identity to fit the story's pace of feeling like a peasant within a royal palace. Speaking of peasants, here's an unused concept known as the Bound Slave, dealing with castles and cultists. The Bound Slave does fit the bill, but I'm assuming this design ventured into some potentially hazardous territory. Either way, this guy genuinely seems like a guy, and that's it. Maybe this was more aligned with the merchant than that of an enemy, and the whole slave versus royalty theme was spread into more fantasy designed characters. The Spike Pits is a perfect example of that, where we can see a different side to Los Iluminados. They're not entirely brain dead. The cultists still have an eye for high prizes. I wonder if they ever tried selling this stuff to the merchants. The other unused characters are more variations of things that did make the final cut, including armored cultists, tattooed cultists, you name it. The more I've looked into these concepts, the more I want to see them actualized in the remake. There are genuinely cool ideas. Don't get me wrong, Resident Evil 4 definitely has its share of iconic monsters, and lots of them. But who wouldn't want to see the Parasite Woman? Well, thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out the second channel in the description. I play Resident Evil games as well as horror games, and I would really appreciate it. Which of these unused concepts would you most like to see in the remake? Or just in general in another Resident Evil game? I think the Parasite Woman probably takes the cake on that one, but let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror lore, lists, and mysteries. Have an awesome rest of your day, and as always, stay single.